Welcome back, girls and boys, to the channel. Today we'll be discussing 5 tips that I can give you right now that are gonna improve the way that you record your vocals in less than a second. So let's begin with this right now. First, we're gonna talk about microphones. First of all, we have to discuss what a microphone is. In simple terms, a microphone is a machine or a device that is changing or is exchanging mechanical energy, in this case, your sound, the sound of your voice, going through the air and hitting the microphone and turns that energy into electric energy that it's then later understood by your electric device, which in this case is your interface. Now, what kind of microphone do you need? Well, that's a great question. I'm glad that you didn't ask. In this case, we're going to discuss 3 types of microphones. The first one is going to be dynamics. A dynamic microphone is a microphone that it's usually used to record loud sources. We're talking about electric guitars, snares, and also especially angry and loud vocals. The second type of microphone that we're going to be discussing is a condenser microphone. What is a condenser microphone? A condenser microphone, instead of using something mechanical in order to turn the sound waves of your voice into electric signal, it's using something called a condenser. And a condenser requires a special amount of energy, in this case 47 volts. That's the reason why you have phantom power in some of the interfaces that you can find online or in the market, or in every single professional mixing desk. What's the difference? Well, a condenser microphone have this tendency of being a little bit more delicate when it comes to the recording. They can capture a little bit more of the sensitivity of your voice, so usually you might like to use one of those microphones when you are dealing with a highly dynamic vocalist. And the third type is ribbon microphones. Those are quite fragile, and actually the sound tends to be a little bit darker, and if you don't use them correctly, you can destroy them for good. Now let's talk about gain. What is gain? Well, gain is something that you're gonna see in your interface or in your mixing desk. And that thing is the first thing that you have to deal with. Once you plug your microphone into the interface, the first thing that you're gonna do is turn up the gain. The gain, it's gonna change the level of perception of your microphone. It's gonna give you the impression that you are raising the volume of the sound source being captured, but in reality you're making the microphone to be more sensitive to what is going on. So, several things are going to happen when you turn off the gain. The first thing is that you're going to have a louder signal, a perceived louder signal. But also, the microphone is going to be more perceptive to everything that is surrounding the sound, and also the sound is going to be captured in a more detailed way. Depending on the kind of preamp that your interface or the preamp that your mixing desk has, the reaction of the microphone in conjunction with that preamp is going to change from model to model. So experiment. There is no such a thing that a set way to work around. But one thing is for sure, always avoid the red. There is a reason why the mixing desk and also the interfaces have a LED that shows you when you're hitting the red. Red means horrible, red means blood, red means that you can go faster. Okay, girls and boys, we're once again back in front of Logic Pro X. This is my digital audio workstation of choice. So now I'm gonna show you what happens when you are dealing with really wrong gain staging. So right now you're listening to my voice going through this microphone. This is a T-Bone SC 1100, an extremely cheap microphone. But as you can see, it sounds quite okay, and it's going into my interface. I am using a really good interface. It's an Apogee Quartet. So yeah, that's the setup at the moment. So now let's see what happens when I change the gain. Something that has to be said before we move forward is that this interface in particular allows me to control the level of the gain, and most of the controls, most of the features of the interface of each of every single one of these preamps inside of the interface through the use of software. So Logic can control the input of my interface without me doing anything on the hardware. So right now we have this set. And as you can hear, my voice is quite clear and loud. See what happens if I go higher. As you can hear, my voice is starting to get louder and louder and louder, but now the distortion is starting to be quite apparent and noticeable. And if I keep cranking it up, you're gonna hear even more distortion. So If you're trying to get that 4chan style of sound, just crank it up and see what happens. But if you want to have a proper microphone recording, you have to find the sweet spot. In this particular case, this is a healthy signal being recorded because this is not only capturing the sound of my voice, but it's also giving me some headroom. Headroom is something that you might need in order for you to record someone who is singing and has a highly dynamic range. So let's give a live example. Never forget you can fly! Bam! Now here comes the deal breaker for every single vocal recording, which is the quality of the room itself. You have seen it, you know how it sounds like, you hate it, I hate it, my mothers hate it, probably your mothers love it, but I don't know, there might be something wrong with me, with everybody else's. But the problem is that if you record your vocals in a way that the room, the sound of the ambience feels like it's quite there, it sounds like an amateur recording, it doesn't sound like a record. So how to change that situation, how to avoid it from happening? Well, there are several ways to do it. First of all, make sure that the amount of gain that you're setting in your preamp, first tip, it's the right amount. Because one of the several things that are going to happen when you raise up the gain quite high is that you're going to get a more roomy sound because you're rising the level of perception of your microphone, remember. So that's one of the things that you have to do. Secondly, you can get one of those screens that you can put behind your microphone. That's not for you to turn down the volume of your voice. No, the thing that it's doing is actually trying to get rid of something that is called air reflections. And those air reflections are the ones that are wreaking havoc in your recordings. So that's one of the other things that you can do. And one more extreme way is go inside of a closed area, let's say your closet or something that it's a place that it's padded. The idea is to have the least reflective material surrounding you. That way, all of the sound coming from your voice, it's gonna be absorbed by that material. And yeah, I know, I said a lot of very beautiful things and probably none of them solved your problem. So the best solution that I can give you at the moment is finding the room inside of your house that has the biggest amount of stuff inside. Have you ever been to an empty house? Let's say that you go to an apartment, you are trying to find a new house for yourself, or any of us have been inside of a house, or to be specific, inside of a room that has nothing to no furniture inside. And the sound is quite bright, you can hear the reflections going everywhere. But then you go into a private library. Let's say that your room is full of books surrounding you, and you can't hear those reflections. Why? Because all of those books are absorbing every single one of those sound waves, because every single one of those books it's absorbing material. So, with that being said, be clever, try to find ways to destroy those air reflections. Now, it's time to have this conversation. I know, girls and boys, but there comes a time in a moment in the life of every single one of us that we have to discuss the use of the Antipop, because you have to remember, safety first. And what is an Antipop? It's basically just a membrane of soft material that gets in front of you and the microphone. Why do you need such a thing? Well, just imagine that you are singing something with P's, T's, and S's, and see what happens if I do P. As you can hear, the sound got horrible, and you could hear every single possible. And I can assure you haven't heard any one of those sounds in any freaking professional recording. Now let's get this out of the way. It doesn't matter if you have the best vocalist singing in front of the microphone, or even if you have the best singing technique, or if you're using the most amazing microphone in the freaking world, or if you're using the best preamp or whatever. If you don't have proper microphone technique, all of those aforementioned benefits are going straight to the drain. Proper microphone technique is it's comprised of managing the distance between you, the singer, and the microphone that is recording, depending on the moment in the song. It's been so long since the last time we were by ourselves. Time of memory, sad time we can't understand. When we were young and felt the same, but nothing else. A place where we belong, but now it's all alone. Don't take it away. Okay, what you just saw was me singing some of the songs of two of her first albums, but also you saw something remarkable happening. During the dynamic example, you saw me changing the distance between me and the microphone as I changed the way that I sang. Why did I do that? Well, the whole point of this is to give the sound a little bit more of texture. That's how you get a proper recording. But the thing is this, it's something that has to be learned by your singer or by yourself if you're the one singing. Now, this is the most important and crucial part. This is what I call the rule of fist, because the proper distance that has to exist in between you and the microphone, it usually has to be something in the likes of the size of your fist, something like this, and you have to play around the distance. Otherwise, you might get into trouble because probably you might be creating the sound, the plosivals. I have an Antipop in here, but there are moments that not even a microphone can get rid of those sounds. So you have to be careful and work around, because as I told you, there is no such a thing as set rules when it comes to recording. Everything is up to you. The sound of your voice being recorded is going to be heavily impacted by the distance of your voice, in this case your body, with the microphone. As soon as you get closer to the microphone, you're going to start to get something that is called the proximity effect. And in simple terms, what you're going to get is a warmer sound, and also you're going to get more low end, which is beautiful for certain parts of the song. And the further back you get from the microphone, you're going to get a brighter sound and also a thinner sound. Now, why would you need something like that? When you are recording a song, and if it's a properly written song, you're gonna get something that is called dynamics. Dynamics means that, in this case, the sound of your voice has different stages when it comes to the strength of the signal or the way that you're singing. In simple terms, a song that has a highly dynamic range when it comes to voice or vocals is a song that has moments in which the singer is singing quite quietly, but in the next section, let's say in the chorus, the singer goes nuts and it's shouting like there is no tomorrow. Before we leave Logic Pro, there is something else that I gotta tell you. Anything that happens inside of Logic Pro has to go through this thing that is called the buffer. So when you are recording, always make sure that the size of your buffer is as low as possible. Otherwise, you're going to encounter something that is called latency. And latency means that every single thing that it's coming through your speakers, it's going to be delayed in reaction to the way that you're singing. So you are going to be completely out of phase when it comes to the singing and the playback. So remember that. As you can see, girls and boys, recording vocals is not that hard. It's only a matter of practice, as everything in life, but also you have to understand what you're doing. And these tips are gonna be a great starting point for any of you who are getting into this whole recording thing, or for all of you who have some form of experience but are not really sure that what they're doing is the right thing to do. As usual, the best way to support this channel is by listening to music on Apple Music or Spotify. Also, if you like this kind of content, or if you have any questions regarding anything regarding music production, or vocals recording, leave a comment down below. And also, following us on social media such as Instagram, Facebook, or anything else that we're on, it's super important. As every single time that I meet you, girls and boys, I gotta tell you, don't let anybody tell you what to dream about. And remember that I will see you when I see you.